And that's the part that I would say most people, and that's the part that personal trainers included, get wrong and do not understand. But let's just talk about then how muscle is built. So hello and welcome to the Smart Strength Training Podcasts. So this is podcast number 12, and I've titled this podcast, What You Think You Know About Muscle Soreness is Wrong. And I'm going to say straight off the bat that DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness, that pain that you feel in your muscles after you've trained, is probably one of the most misunderstood concepts within strength training. And now I'm not just saying that at sort of general population. Actually, it's something that most personal trainers don't understand. Certainly the role of muscle damage and what that means then for muscle being built. I'm sure that you've heard that muscle soreness it means you had a good workout. I'm also sure that you've heard that when we train muscles, that training creates micro tears, micro trauma in muscle. And that is how, in the repair process, we build new muscle. And I'm also pretty sure that you've probably done a workout and been a bit disappointed because you weren't sore after the session. So I want to break this down, discuss soreness, and explain to you why getting sore probably isn't something that you should be aiming for. But to do this, we need to talk a little bit about muscle damage and recovery, because that's a really important thing to understand why soreness probably isn't what you need to focus on. So first up, there are two types of recovery, muscle recovery, let's say. The first up is something called tissue remodeling. Now, when we go through the process of tissue remodeling, this is because you've created so much structural damage to the muscle fiber, what is called the sarcomere, that the structural components of that unit have to be fully rebuilt and remodeled. And what was a totally functional sarcomere has now had to be rebuilt. That is a really big waste of resources and energy. The second level is tissue repair, which is, I think, more people are used to hearing about. And this is the repair of muscle fiber and the organizing of the fiber back into the contractile lines, let's say, so the muscle can pull in a linear fashion to create muscle contraction. And that's a very normal part of the repair process when muscle is damaged. But here's the thing, tissue repair and the muscle damage itself is not what causes muscles to grow. It's a part of the process of muscles being built, but it is not the primary driver of what creates extra, more larger muscles. And that's the part that I would say most people, and that's the part that personal trainers included, get wrong and do not understand. But let's just talk about then how muscle is built. So muscle fibers are not just one big muscle. There are lots of bundles of these sarcomeres bound together. And when we put stimulus, effort, load through the muscles, this places mechanical tension onto the bundle of muscle fibers. If that mechanical tension is higher than was previously encountered, this signals to the brain a pathway called mTOR, in which the body's response is to make structural changes to ensure that the tissue, the muscle fiber, has the capacity to tolerate the same level of mechanical tension next time. Part of that process is repairing the muscle fibers that were damaged, but the laying down of new fibers has nothing to do with that damage. The brain determines if it needs to increase the amount of muscle fibers across the bundle to increase muscle fiber thickness, or along the muscle to increase the length. And this seems to be dependent on the force, and it happens in a fairly ununiform manner. So it's the presence of a stimulus, which would mean effectively more load or more reps, that's greater than the previous stimulus over time that is progressed, that makes the body lay down new muscle fiber. And it's also worth stating, because I've mentioned it on this podcast before, that increasing in muscle fiber thickness is not the only thing that happens. We also have other things. There are changes to the fascia, to connective tissue, to capillary supply, it's altered nerves. There's a lot of things going on at once. And it is a a gross simplification to think that just muscle damage is what causes or triggers a muscle to be built. It's way more complex than that. So let's circle back to soreness. And to be honest, the truth is we don't actually know exactly why there is this delay to the onset of soreness, because soreness can start sort of 12 to 24 hours after training. It can take up to 72 hours for the soreness to start, and it can last for 2 to 3 days, or certainly 1 to 3 days, depending on the severity of the training bout. What's really interesting, there is some research that shows that, or certainly suggests, let's say, because it's only a couple of pieces of research, that the tissue repair and tissue remodeling, even after really extremely damaging training protocols, the actual muscle fiber itself seems to be completely repaired after 24 hours. But this delay can take literally up to days after. So that's days after the repairs actually already happened. So why does this happen? I don't actually know. There are hypotheses, but this bit isn't fully understood. And it's often suggested that potentially inflammation, there could be nerve pressure, it could be the damage to the connective tissue itself, and there's something called the enzyme efflux theory. But the truth is, we don't actually know why there is this big delay. But we do know what types of training create more muscle damage and more soreness. And I think that's really important to point out. So number one, the thing that's guaranteed to make you sore is anything novel and new. So as I sort of mentioned already, that we adapt to the stresses that we place upon our body. So any new movement in a direction or pattern of movement that we've not done before is going to cause soreness. Interestingly, the lengthening phase, that would be the lowering down of a squat, or as the dumbbell goes down towards the floor on a bicep curl, that lengthening phase, or also called the eccentric phase, is the most taxing part on the muscle. So training muscles into long muscle lengths or focusing on that eccentric portion is a way to create more muscle damage and therefore to create more soreness. And the last one is just a very high number of contractions. So lots and lots of reps of an exercise, or the same movement patterns. Let's say you're doing your thighs, your quadriceps, doing leg press and lunges and squats and leg extensions all in the same workout, which works on knee extension. That repeated amount of contraction would also create a lot of soreness. So I want to completely flip your mindset on soreness and think of it as the other way around. Think of this example. Novelty, as I mentioned, is the number one thing that's guaranteed to make someone sore. If I just want to make someone like miserably painful, I'll ask them what they've been doing in their last 6 weeks of training, and I will just not pick any of those exercises and just give them a brand new bunch of exercises. They're going to be wicked sore. So let's take a split squat, for example, a rear foot elevated Bulgarian split squat, because that emphasizes training into long muscle length. And let's say you haven't done that for over a year. Now you put them in, the first 2 or 3 weeks are hell. And after those first 2 or 3 weeks, you can hardly walk, but you probably weren't even lifting that much weight at first. But by week 6, now you're probably lifting 25% more weight and you're doing more reps per set. So you're doing more total load and you're doing more total volume per set. So your overall volume load is far higher. But here's the thing. In week 6, it's not hurting you. But in week 1 to 3, it's making you very, very sore. And you've already heard that muscles adapt, or muscles are being built because the brain is responding to that increased mechanical tension over time. So week on week progression has built muscle to the point in which now you are no longer getting sore. But that initial soreness then is completely irrelevant. It's effectively an annoying part of the process. It's not the process itself. And the hard truth is that for people that love getting sore and they actively chase soreness, often by doing novel things, constantly bringing in new exercises all the time, They're creating a lot of tissue remodeling, or the need for tissue remodeling. There's no real layered progression and therefore no increase in mechanical tension. They're spending a lot of time getting sore, but that's it. They're not actually building any muscle. It's a really great way of spending a lot of time in the gym and not getting very far. So to finish up, a little bit of soreness is fine. It's what we expect at the start of a training phase or a training block. But I'd actively encourage you to try and limit soreness because, like I said at the beginning, the title states, soreness is not doing what you think it is. And if you do find yourself getting sore all the time in your training and you want to create a training program that is much more efficient and effective for your goals, I am available for online training one-on-one.